Hold the line.
One last battle to hold the line against the night.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
Hold the line. No one gets through, no matter what.
Sir, what are your orders?
There's only one order, Lieutenant.
We hold.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
On Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
Does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You are listening to and hopefully watching the HoloNet here on the mighty Mojo 50. And today it is Saturday. It is the 5th of October in the year of our Lord 2019. And because my video software decided to punch me straight in the nargles, we are going old school today. Old school backdrop. We are not in the Mojo 50 Forward Operations Center. We're just kind of chilling out at my place. But folks, welcome to Casa de Holloway. You are listening to the HoloNet, and we have a lot to get to this week. Hey, anybody notice on the Blaze how they dropped bombshells about how the DNC has apparently been doing the whole conspiracy to collaborate with a foreign power to get somebody elected or not get somebody elected for 5 years. If you haven't checked that out yet, I recommend you do check that out. Normally we don't throw things to the other network, but in this case I'm going to make an exception to the rule because I think it is a very, very important video. Brace yourselves, get duct tape ready to wrap around your head, but it is a 2-hour-long chalkboard run-through of a timeline, and I think everybody should check it out. Also, go back and listen to old shows here on the Mighty Mojo 50, because Matt Locke was blowing this thing wide open 2 months ago, talking about the DNC and their dirty dealings in the Ukraine and Hunter Biden's dirty dealings in China. So, here's where we sit. The media is in a state of massive denial. Massive denial. All we're going to hear about in the coming weeks is the impeachment process this, the impeachment process that, where Congress is sticking whose subpoenas, and what little there is to come of it. So, latest news coming out right now from the Washington Post, just barely 5 hours ago. They're now saying that a group of Iranians tried to hack the U.S. presidential campaign in an effort that targeted hundreds of people. This is according to Microsoft, coming in from Seattle. An effort believed to be tied to the Iranian government attempted to identify, attack, and breach email accounts belonging to a U.S. presidential campaign, government officials, and journalists, according to new data revealed by Microsoft, highlighting the continued global security threats that loom over the fast-approaching 2020 election. The intrusion observed by Microsoft, spearheaded by an outfit that calls itself Phosphorus, made more than 2,700 attempts to identify personal email addresses that belonged to the company's customers over a 30-day period between August and September, 241 of which were then attacked. 4 were compromised, but they did not belong to the presidential campaign or government officials, according to the tech giant. So, we now have Iran seeking to insert themselves into our presidential election. Folks, in the 21st century, in the information age, our republic is in more jeopardy than ever. More than ever. You can't believe for a second what the mainstream media, the lamestream media, has to say to you. And the stories that they focus on are of no use to anyone, really. The story that's been the big focus, at least to my eyes that I've seen, has been the AOC Eat the Babies, which, if you've never been on 4chan, that could not possibly be a better example of real-life trolling. Mike Ciandella of The Blaze reports, turns out the Eat the Babies heckler at AOC's rally was a plant by a conspiracy-peddling, pro-Trump LaRouche pack. The woman was not actually there to support the radical environmentalist policies. Question. You think? Seriously? Is this your first rodeo? I mean, of course this woman was a plant. She was there deliberately to troll Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I gotta do it again. And I think she did a rather fantastic job. During a town hall Thursday evening, Ocasio-Cortez was confronted by a woman who declared that since the Green New Deal is not going to solve the problem fast enough, the only solution was to, quote, eat the babies. Now, if you listen to any of the purveyors of truth that are online, like Computing Forever on YouTube, I recommend you check him out if you have not. That's Mr. Cullen, Mr. David Cullen, out of Ireland. He's actually done a series of shows recently on how experts are now saying we need to start eating bugs in order to extend our food supply in the world, in order to make it through the future and climate change and all that BS, and how the future is looking more and more dystopian. So this seems to be taking that to an extreme, and it's hysterical. She went on to say, so I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we've got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you, you're pollutant. Too much CO2. We have to start now. Please, the woman shouted, removing her jacket to expose a t-shirt with the words, save the planet, eat the children. This is hyperbole. This is triggering the left. This is dunking on the libs for some of the crazy, ridiculous shite that they constantly peddle. We're told all the time how we need to stop having babies, how people on the left are now vowing to not have children in order to preserve the earth, in order to save Mother Earth. And this is the logical extension, and the left is acting all shocked and offended, and of course, but here is the crux, folks. For a hot minute, we all believed it, didn't we? We all believed it for just a hot minute. Why? Because they are at that level of crazy. They're at that level already today. I believed it for a cold minute, and then I thought about it, and I said, I think that's a troll. I really do. I watched the video because I was taken just like everybody else is. You hear the headline. You hear, oh my God, some leftist nutbag saying we need to eat babies? Well, when you hear about people in the Netherlands that are being killed off because, legal euthanasia, just because they don't want to live anymore. Not because they have some critical illness, but just because they don't see a point and they're nihilistic and they listen to too much Morrissey and the Smiths. It's to the point now where these sort of things, these sort of preposterous notions are no longer as preposterous. The Overton window has moved. We would have never imagined hearing these things in the news 10, 20 years ago, but now it's commonplace. Peak 2019, where they trolled an AOC event talking about eating babies, and for a cold minute, we all bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. So, to the trolls that made this happen, that's meme-worthy right there. That's a meme. Eat the babies is the new meme. Oh, goodness. So before we get to some Elizabeth Warren news, before we talk about Ms. Pocahontas, I did want to talk to you a little bit about KBMD, Ken Brown, MD, Dr. Ken Brown, he's a butt man. Dr. Ken Brown, MD, has come up with an offer on mojo50.com for KBMD CBD oil. KBMD CBD is physician recommended because it has been used with real patients with real success. It's the best price per milligram of any third-party tested CBD on the market. It's recommended clinically because it is trusted by medical doctors. It's a full-spectrum CBD. CBD works best when used with other natural terpenes and compounds. It's called the entourage effect. It's third-party tested with a real certificate of authenticity. Don't use any CBD that does not have a certificate of authenticity, like the one I drove past last week, which was a street corner stand. Legit, it was like a bad tarp with a cheap table and a cardboard sign that said, oranges, naranjas, which is Spanish for oranges, and CBD. Don't buy from that guy. Don't buy from that guy. Go on mojo50.com/shop. Use promo code MATT, M-A-T-T, for $15 off. KBMD is a hemp extract derived from specifically bred industrial hemp plants with high CBD content. The hemp used is grown organically, and the oil is CO2 extracted. The resultant extract is then added to an easy-to-use dropper bottle containing 900 milligrams of CBD cannabis oil, and it is a wholesome extract. It's not a synthetic. It's not an isolate. It contains all the synergistic cannabinoids, terpenoids, essential oils, and other compounds of the original plant. If you're considering CBD, if you've ever suffered from nagging joint discomfort, difficulty sleeping, frequent inflammation, mood swings, gut problems, CBD by KBMD may deliver real relief. Check it out, mojo50.com/shop. Use promo code MATT at checkout for your $15 off on KBMD CBD oil. All right? Get it? Got it? Good. Moving on. Now, like I said, my video hookup is totally borked, so I'm just going to have to really just kind of read these out. I know I normally do like a picture-in-picture. I toss it up like here or here, where you can see the website that I'm browsing, but I'm going to actually have to be good about putting links in the description this time, because my video is borked. It's messed up. OBS. Nice job, guys. Okay. Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's campaign has fired their national organizing director over, quote, inappropriate behavior. A spokesperson for the Democratic presidential candidate said the campaign received multiple complaints. The campaign for the Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Elizabeth Warren, was handed a pink slip. Rich McDaniel, after receiving several complaints that he exhibited inappropriate behavior. Politico was the first to report that McDaniel had been let go after receiving his termination confirmation from the Warren camp. Campaign spokesman Kristen Orthman said over the past few weeks, senior campaign leadership received multiple complaints regarding inappropriate behavior by Rich McDaniel. Over the same time, the campaign retained outside counsel conduct an investigation. Based on the result of the investigation, the campaign determined that his reported conduct was inconsistent with the values that he could not be part of the campaign moving forward. So they're not moving on really to say exactly what he did. But McDaniel, a former Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign aide and a staffer for Senator Doug Jones in Alabama, was an early hire. And apparently there was discontent with his job performance. So a little bit of an interruption to the Elizabeth Warren bandwagon. And could not come at a worse time, because right now Elizabeth Warren's campaign needs to capitalize because our old buddy Bernie is having a rough go.
Your poison running through my veins! Ah!
Yeah, poor
Son of a bitch!
poor guy had a heart attack. That's confirmed now. Yeah, he had himself a nasty heart attack. Not quite the Widowmaker, but he had a double stint put in, and he's going to be out of the game for a little while. He's going to sit this one out for a bit. I really can't imagine that he makes it into the debate in 2 weeks. What this spells for the presidential campaign on the DNC side, anybody can say at this point. If he decides to bow out and throw all of his support to Elizabeth Warren, that's going to give her a decisive advantage. And as I stated in previous shows, and as I continue to attest, Joe Biden is going to be wrecked by this impeachment attempt. Joe Biden, in fact, doubled down and had his son join him on the campaign trail. How nuts is that? Let me pull that up now. Here we go. USA Today reported. Yeah, I lost all my show notes too, so it happens. Joe Biden defends his son Hunter against Trump's attacks, says he will be part of the 2020 campaign. Former Vice President Joe Biden defended his son Hunter, who said he will be part of Biden's campaign for president. I knew it was going to be this way, Biden said. In an interview with the Reno Gazette-Journal on Wednesday night after campaigning in Reno, Biden said he knew his family would come under attack, but after a sit-down with his 5 grandchildren 3 weeks before announcing he was entered the race, he made the decision. They came to me and they said, "Pop, you've got to run. You've got to run. You got to do it. We know how he is," they said about President Trump, "but Pop, you got to do it." Hunter Biden has come under scrutiny after Trump asked Ukrainian president to, who wrote this? Holy crap. Anyway, Trump claims that Biden tried to remove a Ukrainian prosecutor investigating the company where Hunter Biden served on the board, but sources ranging from former Obama administration officials to anti-corruption advocates in Ukraine say the official Viktor Shokin was ousted for the opposite reason. Trump and his allies claim blah, 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 blah. On that note, there was testimony today before Congress that seems to indicate there is very little meat on the bone for this impeachment. I'm going to get to that a little bit. But not only do I think this is going to backfire for the Democrats. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that this is going to hurt President Trump a little bit in the short run, but in the long run, he's going to be fine. But I think this is going to crush the Democrats, because what is going to happen is this is going to be an expose of all the dirty dealings that past administrations have had with Ukraine and in other nations where there has been clear influence peddling. We're getting a first look inside the true international politics when you're dealing with a country that is recovering from a revolution. It's really a bit crazy. Especially when you take it beside pieces like this one from The Atlantic. How Trump's defenders will be remembered. The president falsely accused a sitting congressman of treason. Why do Republicans stand for this? Connor Friedersdorf of The Atlantic wrote on the 30th, President Donald Trump swore to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution, a document that declares, quote, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Only. On Sunday, Trump attacked Representative Adam Schiff for brains, a Democrat, claiming that Schiff falsely represented the president's words to Congress, which he did falsely represent President Trump's word to Congress. For the record, did. He presented his own false narrative, only then thinly veiling it as, paraphrasing, I think he said it was. Quote, his lies were made perhaps the most blatant and sinister manner ever seen in this great chamber, Trump alleged. He wrote down and read terrible things, then said it was from the mouth of the President of the United States. Trump added, I want Schiff questioned at the highest level for fraud and treason. Now, one has to give the president a little bit of a slap on the wrist of not understanding the legal and constitutional definition of treason, so Trumpy, bad Trumpy. But fraud? Yeah, there's a case. There's a case for that. Even if Schiff had lied about Trump's words in the most blatant and sinister manner, that would not be treason any more than it was treason when Trump lied about the birthplace of his predecessor, President Barack Obama. Yeah, very, very cute. Trump's statement does not merely represent a failure to protect and defend the Constitution. He said he wants someone at the highest level to do something that violates the Constitution. You see, this is the part where somebody takes a single offhand statement to the president and just rams it home. Just decides to take that small part and blow it out into a 1,000-word article. 1,000-word article. Friedersdorf ends by saying, here we go. I scrolled past it. His behavior is a form of civic poison. Trump degrades the Oval Office and sets a bad example for children. Won't someone please think of the children? The Republicans working to keep him in power could have Vice President Mike Pence take over within weeks if they so chose. They prefer this moral abomination. May history remember them as men and women who watched a president falsely accuse a sitting member of Congress of treason and did nothing. Boy, that sounds damning, doesn't it, when you put it that way? You know, kind of damning the way Adam Schiff's complete fabrication sounded when he was standing at the podium before the House of Representatives presenting a fabricated narrative as if it were fact for dramatic effect, and then coming back later and loosely draping the term paraphrasing over it. If you couldn't tell I was paraphrasing, then there's something truly wrong. No, you know why we couldn't tell you were paraphrasing? Because you're a sitting congressman and head of the Intelligence Committee, not some Saturday night talk show host like little old me. On that note, speaking of being a talk show host, hey, I've got sponsors. Check out lovemytummy.com/mojo, lovemytummy.com/mojo for Atrantil. Atrantil contains polyphenols. That's right, polyphenols. Polyphenols are what your body needs. They're desired by your body in order to help control bloating, gas, cramping, help with the digestion, all of your health. All of it originates from the guts, right down here in the guttal region. And if you don't pay attention to your health in the guttal region, you're going to have some health issues in the buttal region, and it's not good. So make sure you get onto lovemytummy.com/mojo, lovemytummy.com/mojo. You can get 3 bottles of Atrantil for $99. That's a fantastic deal. And did I mention how it works very, very well with the aforementioned KBMD CBD oil? These two tools work together. So if you have the bubble guts, the thunder poops, anything of that nature, make sure you get onto lovemytummy.com/mojo. Use Atrantil. That's lovemytummy.com/mojo and get it taken care of today. All right. Again, that's a $99 3-month supply. lovemytummy.com/mojo. Now, when we come back from this very brief break, we're going to talk about what has been trending on Twitter. Yeah, we got to jump to that because this week they've been talking about impeachment. They've been talking about the Joker movie, which now is being universally panned, apparently, by critics, and compared to the written manifestos of incels. Yeah, that's always fun, isn't it? First, incels were going to shoot up the joint. Now it's actually being compared to incels. Man, I'm just getting tired of it. And we're just beginning with this cycle. So, stick around. When we come back, go into what's trending. And we're going to check in on the rest of the world and the really darkening climate of political discourse, especially in Hong Kong. You're listening to the Holonet on the mighty Mojo 50. We'll be back.
on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
Conservative Resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to, and I hope you're still watching, the HoloNet on the mighty Mojo 50. Oh, well, we haven't touched on it in a little while, but I think we're going to have to. We got to jump over that pond, boys and girls. Quick little update on Brexit. If you haven't been watching and paying attention to it, I can't blame you because we've had a lot to watch over here in the U.S. But first, Brexit was seemingly inevitable when Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, convinced the Queen of England to prorogue or dismiss their parliament. God, don't you wish somebody would do that to Congress? Yeah, jeez. And then a counter judgment by the Supreme Court of England involved itself and decided that the prorogation never happened. It might as well have been a blank piece of paper because they found it to be against the completely unwritten and totally unreliable constitutional law of England. You see, they don't have a constitution like we do. That's one of the nice things about actually having a codified constitution on paper is we know who can do what, when, where, why, and how. But in the UK, it's kind of like, I don't know, they did it once in the 1600s. And now that we're in totally uncharted territory with the departure of the UK from the European Union, they don't really know what the hell to do. So a quick update now coming to us from BBC News. Brexit says the UK may clarify a new offer after EU urged fundamental changes. Talks are to resume on Monday after the EU said the UK's proposed alternative to the Irish backstop could not be the basis for a legally binding treaty. The UK has said it will work on the details before then, but that there was no path to a deal without alternative arrangements in Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson has insisted that the only options are a new deal or no deal. Earlier on Friday, he posted a message on social media saying there would be no delay to the UK's exit beyond the 31 October deadline. This was despite the government stating in papers submitted to the Scottish court that the PM would comply with legislation passed by Parliament known as the Benn Act. This requires him to send a letter to the EU asking for a further 3-month Brexit extension if no deal is agreed to by 19th of October, a day after the crucial summit of the European leaders. The UK has said its new proposals presented on Wednesday represent a significant shift and the basis for a fair and reasonable compromise after months of deadlock. The EU seems to be less than impressed, though. Adam Fleming of the BBC said after 5 hours of talks on Friday, the two sides have not agreed to enter the so-called tunnel of intense negotiations on the final legal text. He said the UK wanted the process to be underway, but now the EU is worried that the UK wants to leave too many details about customs regulatory checks in Northern Ireland to be agreed on during the post-Brexit transition period. EU negotiators told diplomats that questions and gaps still remained and that fundamental changes were needed to make the UK blueprint acceptable. So Brexit leader Nigel Farage weighed in and told the BBC that Mr. Johnson was deluding himself if he thought he could do a deal, saying the odds were hovering close to zero. So this month we're going to have to continue to watch our cousins across the Atlantic and make sure that nothing goes too sideways over there. Because I can tell you this, if Boris Johnson manages to pull off Brexit without a hitch, or with minimal hitches, if he manages to get it done by October 31st, he is going to be a hero of his nation. A hero of his nation. If he should fail, and if the Labourites and the DUP and the SNP and all of the other various smaller parties have their way, if the Remainers have their way, then rest assured, there will be significant unrest in the streets of London, of Manchester, of Edinburgh, all the major cities of England. Hong Kong is going to be a familiar sight indeed. Speaking of Hong Kong, latest news from the Pacific. A new face mask ban has been introduced in Hong Kong. through an emergency action of the Executive Council was announced earlier today. I actually listened to the explanation behind this, and it is just as crazy as it sounds. Chief Executive Carrie Lam invoked a colonial-era emergency law in a bid to quell months of anti-government unrest. The ban comes after an escalation of violence during protests on the 1st of October when an officer shot a demonstrator. Reports on Friday said the 14-year-old had been shot in the leg. 14 years old, shot in the leg by Hong Kong police. He's reportedly being treated at the Tuen Mun Hospital and is in serious condition. Police statement published in the South China Morning Post confirmed an officer fired one shot as his life was seriously under threat after being attacked by a large group of protesters, including with gasoline bombs. The statement does not, however, say if anyone was hit. The demonstrations have now died down throughout most of the territory, although there are still pockets of unrest. So, masks, especially in places like Hong Kong, which have extensive CCTV systems. In fact, one of the sources of this period of unrest in Hong Kong was because of an extradition law that was being put into place that would allow people to be extradited from Hong Kong into mainland China for offenses. And they also put in a large CCTV system, a large camera system on their streets. And people in Hong Kong were very concerned that they would be snatched off the street and delivered to China for prosecution for having, anti-communist leanings, for having opinions contrary to the state. Well, it seems now that Carrie Lam and the government of Hong Kong are playing into those fears a bit by now banning masks from being worn in the street during demonstrations. Today will be the last time demonstrators can hide their faces legally. Anonymity has become a key part of this movement, but many fear that the introduction of this emergency law can lead to further restrictions. The protest movement began in opposition to an extradition law bill now withdrawn from the legislature. The use of the emergency law did not need to go through the legislative body. It was enacted purely by the Executive Council. Carrie Lam insists that the territory is not in a state of emergency, but that the law allows her to take emergency measures. This reminds me eerily of Star Wars Episode 3, Episode 2, I believe it was, when then Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, after being voted emergency powers by Jar Jar Binks, everybody's favorite Star Wars idiot, promises that he would put these powers down as soon as this crisis has abated. And that's just not the way it works. So we now see Carrie Lam and the Executive Council in Hong Kong picking up these emergency powers in spite of being unwilling to declare an actual emergency. Kind of nice when you can have it both ways, isn't it? The reason why I draw your attention to these things, I want to come back to a concept that I touched on in the previous episode of the HoloNet, when we talked about the likelihood of a second civil war, because it was actually trending due to President Trump's tweet. I don't believe we're going to be looking at a north-south conflict or a state-to-state conflict. That's just not the way things work anymore. It's not the way the United States is arranged. We are going to see civil unrest. And people are very, very scared of that, even right here in my own Arizona. Right here in the state of Arizona, up near Kingman, Arizona, there's an event going on this weekend. It's called Trumpstock. It was supposed to be held at the Kingman Fairgrounds, which have, nice event stages and such. This story comes to us from the Arizona Mirror, as much as I hate to give them a click. Trumpstock loses event permit and will move to a pizza restaurant. The Trumpstock event aims to bring together elected officials, candidates, and QAnon musicians, has lost its permits to go to the Mohave County Fairgrounds and will now be taking place at the pizza restaurant in Golden Valley, an incorporated community just west of Kingman. Kingman city officials revoked the permits for the 3-day event, which is scheduled to begin tomorrow, because organizers failed to provide sufficient security. According to a report by today's News Herald, the local newspaper of Lake Havasu City, the event will now take place at Great American Pizza instead. Trumpstock organizer Lori Bezick told the Havasu newspaper that the property will have plenty of space to accommodate the speakers and crowds she was anticipating. She said the pizza place is on several acres of private property. The announcement about Trump stock losing its permits was made on the Mohave County Fairgrounds Facebook account. The comments section of the post was flooded with pro and anti-Trump stock messages. Note when they say flooded, that means 48 apparently. 48 comments. Grand total, 23 shares. You see, that's the problem when you try to lay down some bull and you actually inset the Facebook post in your story. Nice job, Arizona Mayor. Good job, guys. Good game. Bezic claimed that the new News Herald that the move by Kingman officials was politically motivated. Quote, they don't seem to be supportive of our president and of our veterans as we hoped. Tickets cost between $50 and $125, and the event's website states that a portion of proceeds will go to first responders and veterans. Honestly, changing your venue from fairgrounds to a pizza joint when the ticket cost me $125, I don't think I'd be thrilled about that. Kind of reminds me a little bit of when, the world's, I believe they call him the most dangerous Mr. No, I can't say that on the air. That's a bad word. It means a bundle of sticks. But when Mr. Milo Yiannopoulos was set to come to the state of Arizona, his venues canceled on him for the same reason. He was actually going to be holding his event down at a horse resort, an equine resort. I believe it was in the city of Mesa. And they just summarily canceled on him with the same excuse/reason that they're not providing sufficient security. So what in your mind is sufficient security for a conservative event? Do we need to call in the National Guard here? Do we need to declare martial law? What is a sufficient level of security now to run a conservative pro-Trump event? Do we need armed guards replete with M16s and riot gear? Or do we just need a couple of Marlboro men with shotguns? I mean, what are we looking at here, guys? What is the agreed upon level of security that will prevent people from out and out just canceling your for no apparent reason? Can somebody answer me this one? And this isn't the first roadblock this little event has encountered. Last week, Bezic had to put out a call for 15 RVs to house VIP speakers in, and two prominent elected officials who were previously listed as speakers pulled out. One of them said he had never agreed to speak. Now, other speakers include U.S. Senate hopeful Greg Brattain and right-wing activist Jennifer Harrison. By the way, I'm cleaning this up a little bit because the invectives that the AZ Mirror chooses to launch at these people, they're not kind. State legislator Kelly Townsend. Hey, Kelly, we know Kelly. Kelly's cool. Kelly's friend of the program. As much as politicians can be friends of any program, but no, Kelly's chill. I like her. She's a Republican from Mesa, and Representative Paul Gosar of Prescott are also planning to attend. Attending among the scheduled entertainers is the rapper Nightmare, Nitemare, whose lyrics have called former President Barack Obama a queer and a Muslim, and also has songs accusing Hillary Clinton and other politicians are involved with the sex trafficking of children, which is part of a conspiracy theory referred to as QAnon. Aw, they think QAnon is one theory. That's cute. Anywho. So, Trump stock here in Arizona losing their permit. Again, very reminiscent of Milo Yiannopoulos losing his permit. So what's the deal? We're not going to see in the United States, at least not for some time, I believe. We're not going to see the government cracking down on free speech events. It's not going to happen for a little while. At least not the federal government. We're going to see little municipal governments say, we can't provide sufficient security for this event, or it's going to bankrupt our city, or this, that, or the other. And then, insert excuse here. Really comes down to cowardice. I can relate. I can almost sympathize with like the city of Kingman and other small towns because they don't want to be the next Charlottesville. They know that they can't control something like that with the limited resources they have available to them. Some of these towns are running on a shoestring. And if they suddenly had to spend several $100,000 in police overtime, it would be pretty devastating for them. But this is a new method of deplatforming. Now, I want you to think about military tactics here. And I'm going to get to the next sponsorship spot in just a second. But there used to be a concept in the military. It still may exist as a concept, but I know it was big in World War II. It was called a fleet in being. Okay? Now stay with me. I know this is going to seem a little bit weird, okay? But Antifa and other organizations have set themselves up very similarly to these fleets in being. Now, I hate using them as a source, but I'll go ahead and do this just for the definition. But in naval warfare, a fleet in being, according to Wikipedia, is a naval force that extends a controlling influence without ever leaving port. Were the fleet to leave port and face the enemy, it might lose in battle and no longer influence the enemy's actions. But while it remains safely in port, the enemy is forced to continually deploy forces to guard against it. A fleet in being can be part of a sea denial doctrine, but not one of sea control. So, to give you a couple of examples here, in World War II, there were the actions of the Italian Regia Marina in 1940. After a number of minor battles against the Royal Navy that were mostly inconclusive, the bulk of the Italian fleet was left at Taranto, from where it could sortie very quickly against any British attempt to reach Malta, exerting a, quote, disproportionate influence on British strategy and fleet disposition, even after the great success of the British aircraft carrier attack on Taranto in November in 1940. The British failure to deliver a decisive blow to the Italian fleet resulted in the Royal Navy tying up substantial naval forces in the Mediterranean for the next 3 years. An even more direct example is when a single ship can be by itself a fleet in being. This happened with the Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine. The powerful battleship Tirpitz served her entire career as a fleet in being in her own right. She never fired a single shot at an enemy ship, but her mere presence in the Norwegian fjords forced the Royal Navy to allocate powerful warships to defend their Arctic convoys and caused a major convoy to scatter, suffering huge losses. This is how Antifa and the leftist protesters are now operating. The very threat is enough. The very idea that they may come out in force and protest and loot and pillage and burn, a la San Francisco or a la Portland, is enough, where small cities like Kingman are going to bow to barely existent pressure. One tweet from one of these groups is enough to scare the ever-loving out of a small enough town that they'll throw up their hands and they'll cancel it. You're not providing adequate security. If you cannot 100% guarantee the security of your event, cancel. We're going to cancel your permit. It is platform denial. It's not deplatforming anymore. It's platform denial by a force in being. Think of that power and how ridiculous it is that a couple of people sitting in mom's basement can exert enough force to get a city, a state, a county to revoke a permit for American citizens to legally assemble in peaceful political discourse because the threat of their mere existence is sufficient. Take real quick, got to do a couple things here. Combat flip-flops. If you haven't been on Combat Flip-Flops yet, go to combatflipflops.com, please. Check them out. Combat Flip-Flops grow entrepreneurs in conflict areas. They fund women's education. Join the unarmed forces today. Be a part of a community built on hope, passion, and strength. Rebuild nations. Create change. Or keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Be the change that you want to see. Combat Flip-Flops creates peaceful, forward-thinking opportunities for self-determined entrepreneurs affected by conflict. Their willingness to take bold risks, build community connections, and create distinct military-inspired designs communicate their business, not bullets approach, flipping the view on how wars are won. Through persistence, respect, and creativity, they empower the mindful consumer to buy products that encourage peace through trade. They're a team with a passion for making cool shite in dangerous places. Go to combatflipflops.com. Use promo code HOLLOW25, HOLLOW25 on combatflipflops.com. Join the unarmed forces today. Thank you. But back onto that, man. Back onto that. How crazy is that? I mean, let me know in the comments here what you think. But that's all it takes now. A couple of well-placed Twitter posts. A credible threat. You know what this reminds me of? Minds IRL. You remember that? Minds IRL was going to take place in New Jersey. And it was going to feature Sargon of Akkad. It did, but they had to change the place. Let's see. This is the Federalist. Social media platform Minds teamed up with Myth-Informed and the new media venture Subverse to present Minds IRL conference last weekend. Let's see here. The Minds IRL conference was aimed at ending racism, violence, and authoritarianism. Poole said in a live stream that he wanted to put together an event with people I thought were from different parts of the political spectrum. In the leftist arena, free speech activism has come to be almost synonymous with racism, primarily because folks who lean right are currently advocating for free speech, while the left proffers hate speech and compelled speech laws and demands adherence to the new vocab, form pronouns, and decolonizing language. In this rich hellscape of contemporary discourse, Minds, Myth-Informed, and Poole have been called racist, bigots, conservatives, transphobes at one point or another, and as have many of the conference panelists and speakers. The point of the conference was to say, in lots of ways, this seemed to be a way for them to say, hey, we seemingly right-wing YouTubers actually have center-left political views and we are not racist. Now, the Threatener's Veto. Originally planned to be at the Broadway Theater of Pitman, New Jersey, about a 20-minute drive from Philadelphia, the venue received threats of violence and subsequently declined to host the event. No Hate New Jersey, which is a previously little-known, little-heard-of outlet, said, we are receiving word the theater has decided to cancel the event. However, we are waiting on a public statement from the theater confirming this, so please keep up the pressure. Today, we resume our call in a campaign to get this hate fest in Pitman canceled. Call the Broadway Theater and ask them why they are hosting hate. You can also email owners Darren Blood and Peter Slack, and they provide their information. Organizers relocated the conference to the Sugar House Casino in Philadelphia, but didn't release the details of the change until only a few hours before the show. Freelance writer Talia Levin made sure to let everyone know on Twitter. So, Minds IRL, which is billed as an attempt to bring together the disparate and various sides of internet subculture of YouTube. Tim Poole, who is definitely center-left, Sargon of Akkad went. Let me see here. Blair White, Armored Skeptic, Shoe on Head, Josephine Matthias. A whole bunch of people went to this thing. Talking about nuance, context, and the future of comedy online. The Great Migration, a discussion on digital and physical immigration. I mean, I really want to go to this. But now with every major event, every major free speech event, number one, you have to individually think about your own safety. I've got a family at home. Something going to happen to me. Something going to happen to my friends. If it's just me, that's one thing, but am I going to bring my family to one of these things? That's a tough sell. But is it even going to happen? Because the venues are going to get pressured to deplatform, and now even municipalities are getting pressured to deplatform by smaller and smaller groups that seem to crop up and disappear like a fart in the breeze. We must have courage. Courage and strength in our convictions. And sadly, it seems that these kind of free-thinking events and free speech events are going to be driven underground. And when that happens, that's when you see the content decay. That's when you see people who you don't want in this conversation being admitted in. This is when, true white supremacist groups and true fascist groups thrive in this environment. They fester like an infection that you've ignored too long. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. So conservatives, libertarians, center-right liberals, center-left liberals, we all have to band together in our defense of the American right to assemble peaceably. And we cannot bow, we cannot break before this pressure, before this force in being, this projection of perceived threat through social media, or through email, or through phone calls. We cannot bow to this pressure, even if the threat is real. We have to be secure in our persons and in our property, and secure in our convictions and in our rights. So I applaud that Trump stock is in progress. I've been keeping track of it through a lot of people I follow, like Representative Kelly Townsend and a few other people that are there. But folks, be safe. Keep your heads on a swivel. Keep it peaceful. And keep it righteous. From Phoenix, I'm Matt Holloway. Good night. God bless you. And God bless.